The Matrix is a classic that I have never watched before until now. Now don't let that fool you, okay? I might not have watched these movies growing up. I was a bit too young, not going to lie, and I never really bothered to watch them, but that doesn't mean I don't know much about The Matrix. Oh no, I spent the last 2 days reading up upon it, watching all of the movies, so I believe I have a pretty decent idea of what these films are about. And my oh my, am I glad I delved into the world of The Matrix, even if it took me until now. After watching the original 3 movies, I could see how exciting these movies would have been back in the day when they were first released, because it's like they make you question reality about what's real, and they show you what the possible future could look like, with robots and artificial intelligence ruling everything. It truly shows a dark, scary, and quite possible future. And yes, when I first watched The Matrix, it was pretty confusing because it is complex and these aren't the most simplest of movies, but the more I delved within this world, the more I see why a whole lot of people love these movies so much. The action, the fight scenes, the environment design, the acting, the music as well, it felt like it almost had the same amount of hype that superhero movies and Marvel shows do. And the action, mostly in the second movie, was just superb. That highway chase scene, which was paired with that exhilarating chase music, plus that clone fight, I'd easily recommend that movie just for those 2 scenes alone. Now, I've seen a lot of movies with a lot of fight scenes, but I don't think I've seen anything quite like these ones. There's truly something special about the Matrix fight scenes. Some of the action sequences do look like they're floating and gravity isn't real. It sometimes doesn't look very realistic, but the thing about these movies is that they don't have to be. It's almost as if they are like a game. Now that's a bit about what I thought of the original 3 movies, which released all the way back in 1999 and 2003. I thought they were amazing. I mean, if I thought they were really great today and they still hold up, imagine what people would have thought about them around 20 years ago when they first got released. The Matrix Resurrections, on the other hand, the 4th installment in this series, is definitely not as amazing. Put simply, The Matrix Resurrections is where an older, more out of action Mr. Anderson, aka Neo, has to revisit the Matrix once again. It's in the title, it's like he resurrected or some shit. So a lot of things appear new, but it's like he never left and he is still after the same things. If I had to put it into simple terms, this movie just feels like it satisfies nostalgia and that's it. Because if I were to look at this movie just by itself, while not terrible, it does have its positives. It's definitely still not as good as the original movies and feels like it can't survive without them either, because this movie spends a lot of its time explaining the events between the previous film and this one. And there are a lot of references to past movies as well, but almost like it's overloading with them. Some Matrix fans will appreciate this though. I know for me, I like this one instance where Neo was looking outside at some birds flocking together in a very pattern-like manner, and it's like it reminded him of the machines from the war in the 3rd movie. This is by no means a spoiler, that's why I included it, but it's something I noticed and appreciated. And that's the thing, I'm actually curious to what actual fans of The Matrix, people who have watched these films from since when they first released, think about this one, because for me, this film just feels like it's jam-packed with nostalgia, but a little too much, like they really try to force it down your throat. There's a lot of flashbacks to scenes that we see in previous movies. Other than that, I can see how this movie can be pretty disappointing if you compare it to the previous Matrix films. But I mean, it's really hard not to. The villain, I don't know, they tried really hard to make him like the Mr. Smith from the originals, but I still prefer the Mr. Smith from the originals way more and found him much more menacing. And in terms of the action, sure, there was some Matrix-esque fighting in there with the slow-mo and the dramatic jumps, but that's basically it. Nothing too out of the ordinary or as exciting as some of the previous action scenes or stunts that we have seen, you know, in previous movies. And this movie focuses, well, much more, I'd say. I'd say the main focus of this movie is on the story, and mainly just the story of Neo and Trinity. But I mean, you can really tell Keanu Reeves has aged since his last few Matrix movies, because it really shows in this movie with his inability to do certain things, which I guess is why there is much less action in this one, in terms of fight scenes, that is. That's because the two main members of the Matrix were basically missing in action. While watching this movie, I did have a lot of questions. Like I said, these movies aren't the most straightforward, but most of them were answered towards the end. And I mean, I don't want to give a lot away, but let's just say that the more you delve into this world, for example, watch all of the movies, the more you will learn what the Matrix movies are truly about. Some might get it straight away, but for me, I didn't fully understand everything until I started watching this movie, because it reminded me of a few things that I didn't quite understand in the first movie. Now, I think it goes without saying from this review that the original movies are still much better. I highly recommend them even to this day. The first one was a great introduction, the second one had amazing action sequences and fights, and the third one was just epic. Not saying that the other movies didn't have, one or the other, like amazing fights, but I'm just saying what stood out to me for each one of them. This movie, on the other hand, just felt like it didn't really need to happen and just satisfied nostalgia by almost revisiting the old movies in a new and modern way. And because of that, I feel you probably won't get much out of this movie unless you watched the other Matrix movies, especially if you grew up with them. I'm going to give The Matrix Resurrections a B-. I would probably give the original Matrix movies like a B+ or probably an A- altogether. They are by no means perfect, but I still enjoyed them a lot. This film, though, deserves between a C+ to a B- grade because it is the weakest of all the films, I thought. I like to think of this one as not really a continuation of the originals or a fourth film, even though it technically is, but it just feels different, like it's a soft reboot in a way, and it's more of a nostalgia piece than anything else. But anyway guys, thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think down below, like and sub if you enjoyed, and as always, feel free to check out any of my previous videos. Until next time.